Arkansas is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Madam Chair, I'm glad we're finally here on the floor today talking about an issue that's important to our whole country, and I appreciate the gentleman from Colorado and his concerns about wildfire, and I wish that we could work together on actually solving these issues in a manner and with policy that would actually do something. I learned in engineering school that expending effort is not work. For example, you can push on a boulder all day, but until something moves, no work has been accomplished. To put it another way, there's a saying that you should never confuse motion with action, which is exactly what the legislation before us today does. This bill is more than 550 pages, yet does absolutely nothing to prevent wildfires or significantly improve our resiliency to drought. This bill will actually make our wildfire crises worse. Perhaps that's why my Democrat colleagues named it the Wildfire Response Act. It should have been, or instead of naming it the Wildfire Prevention Act, which is what we should be focusing on, because we'll have to respond to all the wildfires that are going to happen anyway and the new ones that this bill creates. Here's a little bit of Forestry 101. There are two ways to reduce wildfire risk: thinning and controlled burning. This bill mentions thinning 0 times. Not once does it mention thinning, but it mentions environmental justice 165 times. That should tell you what this bill is really about. Instead of streamlining environmental regulations and addressing frivolous litigation, which delay vital forest management projects across the country, this bill would add mountains of new red tape on our federal agencies that will grind their already glacial pace of treatments to a complete halt. It would throw out the Forest Service's 10-year strategy to reduce hazardous fuels and make them completely redo this work less than 6 months after they started implementing their current strategy. This makes you wonder if congressional Democrats disagree with the work of the Biden administration, or if they found the administration's work product as deficient and unreliable. It would lock up 58 million acres of land into new roadless areas, despite research showing that more than half of all fires, including most of the largest fires on western U.S. national forest lands, burn primarily in roadless areas, areas where land restrictions use mean that we can't thin and we can't do management. Instead, the bill would fund environmental volunteerism to provide N95 masks and smoke inhalation equipment for homes, which I'm sure will be of little comfort to people as their homes are burning to the ground. Democrats will tell you this legislation raises wildland firefighter pay to $20 per hour. The only problem with that is that firefighters already make at least $20 per hour, meaning this so-called raise is an empty promise. In the long term, the bill would write a check that it can't cash by setting up this new minimum pay rate with no actual money to back it up. The Forest Service has told us this means they would have to lay off over 610 wildland firefighters. Let me say that again. The Democrats' bill could result in the firing of more than 610 wildland firefighters who are putting their lives on the line to protect communities. This is a disgrace and will hurt our fire preparedness and response. As if that weren't enough, the bill would create new pay disparities by leaving out 10,000 brave men and women fighting fires from receiving new benefits. That's roughly 40% of the federal firefighting workforce. Some of my Western colleagues will soon speak about the water provisions in this bill, but I want to say that the bill misses the mark on drought as well by proposing more than $4 billion in new authorizations and has unlimited mandatory spending. Once again, the other side of the aisle is passing on more debt to our future generations, and we see what uncontrolled spending has done to our economy with inflation, with high energy prices, high food prices, and really higher prices across the board. We're now in according to conventional economics, we've had 2 quarters of economic decline, and we're in a recession. Why would we want to put more government funding in debt on our constituents? I do not understand. It would also devote some of these dollars to studies, research, and environmental water restoration projects that will not provide any water in the near term. It picks winners and losers in water projects, ignoring the need for expanded water storage reservoirs, the kind of infrastructure investment that has made the West what it is today, and is necessary to ensure a drought-resilient future. This bill offers a one-dimensional approach to solving the Western drought that has impacted the entire country through decreased agricultural production. Reservoirs operated by the Bureau of Reclamation provide needed water to 10 million acres of farmland that collectively grow 60% of the nation's vegetables and 1/4 of our fresh fruit and nut crops. By throwing money at an issue and not recognizing that regulatory streamlining to expand water storage and efficiency of operations to promote drought resiliency should be part of this equation, this bill fails not only the West, but everyone who buys food nationwide. Put another way, this bill fails every American household. This is bad policy and bad process. Democrats cobbled together this 550-plus page bill behind closed doors, and not one wildfire provision was marked up in the Committee on Natural Resources. Republican members made real attempts to provide alternatives and additions to this bill. Dozens of regulatory streamlining amendments that could have helped provide water or immediately prevented wildfires were submitted to the Rules Committee by Republicans, only to be ignored. Even the majority of bipartisan amendments were rejected. This is an abomination of process, but it's nothing new that we're seeing on this House floor. If you were here last night, you know that a NEPA streamlining bill, and a Senate NEPA streamlining bill was parachuted in at the last minute. It was put on the suspension calendar, and I hope this bill passes during the next voting series, but we should be doing NEPA revisions through hearings and through markups and through regular order, and if it takes getting one dropped in on the suspension calendar by the Senate, I guess we'll have to take what we've got. But it would be nice if we could actually debate these and come up with more NEPA streamlining. In the midst of historic drought conditions and what is on track to be the most devastating wildfire season on record, we simply cannot afford to confuse motion with action. I strongly urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to reject this partisan package and instead work together on real solutions to prevent wildfires. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Arkansas reserves